Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I am on to do some more of the lantern with you. So if you were on my live on Monday, you will have seen that I started to do my lantern that I'm doing for Christmas. And I painted it, I gessoed it all, rubbed it back, gessoed it all, put the hot glue on to make some of the weld sort of texture and a bit of microbeads in there to add some more texture, and I painted it all with black gesso and left it to dry. And then I did the candle. I put some wax drips with the glue gun on that, and I made a buff titanium coloured gesso, and I painted that. So I've done a bit of dry brushing already, but I think what we'll do is we'll work on the lid, because that's going to be easier for me to show you how I'm doing it. So as you can see, I've already made a start. So I have done some dry brushing already with this, and I've literally, all I've done is taken a brush with some silver paint. I'm just looking to see if I can see the silver paint that I used, which was this one, which is just metallic silver artiste paint, and I've put a tiny amount on the bag. And then I've just rubbed it off as much as I can, and then I've just literally dry brushed in all different directions over every side, and I've obviously done the base as well. And by going in the different directions, you get that more sort of metallic-y look to it. And what it does is it picks up all the rough texture from the gesso on the piece, and gives it that sort of metallic-y look to it. So now I want to put a bit of rust and stuff on it. So I've taken some of the gesso that I created, and I've just added some more talc into it to make it into a texture paste. And I am actually going to just put a little bit of this texture paste, just a scoop, into another tub, and I'm going to add just a little bit of brown acrylic paint. So I'm going for the darker one. I'm starting with the darkest colour, which is the burnt umber, and I'm going to put some of this in. Now obviously I can't put loads of this in, because it will I'll end up having to put more talc, and then I need to put glue and but I can always paint over it, so I'm not too worried. If I was making it from scratch, I would just make a dark brown texture paste. But because I'm not making it from scratch, I am just using some gesso that I'd already got made. I haven't bothered. But you could do it with dark brown texture paste, and then you wouldn't need to paint over it. I'm going to have to paint over this once I've done, because this isn't dark enough. However, it will do. Now I want it to be a little bit more textured, so I've got here some sand texture stuff. I raid my husband's model making supplies every now and again, and this is a good one for adding texture. So I'm going to chuck that in, and I'm going to give that a bit of a mix. So you can use pretty much anything for texture. Sand, I've got some sand, and I might do one with, I might do the next colour with a bit of sand. But you just want something just to add that little bit of grainy texture, you know, so go steady. You can always add a bit more in. Obviously harder to take it out once you've mixed it in, as in impossible to take it out once you've mixed it in. So just give that a good mix about, like so. And all I want is a grainy texture paste. And I'm actually going to use a stiff, it's just a cheap brush. I picked them up last year in the pound shop at Christmas. They came with like a cheap decoupage kit at Christmas last year. And again, I'm just going to start where I want the rust patches to be. I'm going to add in some of this texture paste. Now, like I say, if you want to miss a step out, make your texture paste dark brown to start with, and then you won't need to do this so much. So I'm sort of picking up on where I've already got some texture, where I've put the microbeads on initially. But again, it's just that thinking about, if this had been sat somewhere with water dripping on it, where would your rust patches be? like that, like so. And all I'm going to do is go along and add my rust wherever I want my rust effect to be. Now I'm doing it roughly because I do still want to have some of the metal of the welds and stuff to show through. I don't want to cover it completely with this mixture, otherwise you won't get the effect that I'm looking for. So I'm going to have to pause the video because my tea is now beeping and I need to go and stir fry the veg. So I will, I'll go and put the tea. I'll finish putting this layer on and then I'll come back and we'll sort of paint it together and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I am back. It is now quite some time later, as you can probably tell by the darkness and the shadows. Try and get a bit of light on the subject. I have had tea, tidied up from tea, helped my elder daughter get all her stuff ready for making Christmas cards. And I have also helped my younger daughter get together the bits that she needs to take into school tomorrow because she's doing an art GCSE and the supplies at school aren't particularly brilliant, so they're allowed to take in bits and pieces of their own. She's doing quite a mixed media piece as well, so she's been raiding my craft room for bits and pieces, so I was just helping her find what she wanted, and now I'm back to this. But that has given my texture paste lots of time to dry off, and you can see that I have sort of covered all those crease points again where the rust would be. I'm making this look really vintage, so mine is going to be really rusty. You obviously don't have to have the same amount of rust as I'm doing. And then I've done the same to the base as well. So all down those sides, all on the bottom where it would be stood in a puddle of water is all going to be rusty. Now, obviously, as I said, I've not done a dark brown texture paste, so I need to now give it a bit of a coat. So I am using some burnt umber to start with. So it's just any old acrylic paint. This is just a really cheap one from a local, it's not even a craft store, it's from Home Bargains, and it's just a burnt umber. So quite a dark, sort of mid to dark brown. And all I'm going to do is go along, and wherever I've put that texture paste, I'm just going to stipple the brown paint because I'm wanting to make sure that I get it all the way into all those crevices. So I'm wanting to cover up all that pale stuff, but I don't mind if some of the darker shadows and you know, some of the sort of metallic-y black from underneath shines through. That's fine. That will just add to the texture and to the depth. So what I don't want is any sort of straight lines. So where that was a bit of a straight line, I've just dabbed at it again with the paintbrush to take any straight lines. It doesn't matter if it creeps over onto the paintwork, that's fine. It doesn't have to just be the textured bit. And like I say, if you'd have been sensible and not like me and made yourself a dark brown texture paste in the first place, you wouldn't need to do this bit. But I'm not sensible, and I just used what I'd got. Just thickened up the gesso I already had. So I have got to just go over and give everything a coat of the brown paint. And this is the base layer for rust. So if you look at anything that is actually genuinely rusty, it's never one colour, it's not flat. There's usually lots of different colours in rust, and you can get all different coloured. You know, some rusts have got purples in, some have got oranges, some have got some blue bits in. I think it depends on, you know, the metal that is rusting, or whether it's oxidizing as opposed to rusting. So like copper, as it oxidizes, goes that lovely greeny bluey verdigris colour. So yeah, so that is all I'm going to do for the minute. I'm just going to go along and make sure that I've covered all of this texture paste with a nice coat of brown umber, and then I'm going to give it a quick dry with my heat tool, and we'll come back and start doing the next layer. So I'll pause while I do this bit. Okay, so I've painted all of those bits brown now. I'll put the frame over there to dry for a little bit. But the lid has already dried, and what I'm doing to make it look a bit more natural and like it's all, you know, the rust has sort of grown and rippled on the paintwork, on the metal. I've taken some of that silver metal paint that I actually did the dry brushing in the first place, and all of that texture and all of that stuff that I've just painted brown, I'm now just dry brushing very randomly, but very, very lightly, hardly anything on the brush at all. Put it on, take it straight back off again. When you're dry brushing, hold your brush right at the very end and just waft the bristles of the brush over in various directions. So that's just picked up a little bit of brown paint where the paint wasn't quite dry, but that's okay. It will just add to the mingled look. So you can see that what that does is it knocks that brown backwards a little bit and makes it look like it's part of the metalwork, which is what we want. And then I didn't knock that off enough, so, well, in fact I didn't knock it off at all. So you can see that there's just a little bit too much at the top, but that's going to be fine because I've got more layers to put on yet, so it doesn't matter too much. Like so. So every bit, anywhere where I've put that brown, I'm just giving it another quick flicking over with the silver, just to, like I say, make that all part and parcel of the actual metalwork, make it part of the piece. There we go. There we are. Brilliant. So that's looking like an old rusty lantern lid already. But I want to take the rust a little step further. So now I'm going to use a bit of this, which is burnt sienna. So I'm just going to put a little bit. I don't want much because, again, I'm just going to be putting very small amounts of this onto my piece. So with the burnt sienna, again, put it on, knock it off, and I'm just going to dab it over. So it's there, but it's not overpowering, and it will knock off some of that silver that we've just put on, but that's okay because this is all about building your layers, and that's what will eventually make it look like rust, like real rust. And don't forget, you know, nothing's undoable. If you do something and you think, oh, I don't like that, I wish I'd not put that bit on, you can just, you know, paint over it and start again. It's just paint, and actually the more layers this has on it, the better it ends up looking. There we go. So all we're using this burnt sienna for is to just add a bit more colour. So there's no texture, it's a flat paint. My my burnt sienna is reasonably transparent, so you do still get all the, you know, the brown, the rich brown from the burnt umber underneath it, and obviously I'm putting it in a very, very thin layer, which that also really helps. See, I've not taken it off properly again there, so I'm just going to give that a quick rub with my fingers. Like so. And just all over where I want the rust. So just on the edges, just giving that a bit of a hint of the orange. This is sort of the orangey brown. And also, you know, if there's any bits of the cream, the sort of creamy browny colour that I missed from doing the from the texture paste, this will just highlight that. Okay, so don't forget the handle. So I've got this bit here where this is all just paint and gesso and texture paste that's built up on that handle, and then I've moved the handle and it's left with me with this flaky bit, but I'm really liking it because I think it looks like a bit of, you know, rust that's flaking away, so I'm going to leave that on there. There we go, like so. Obviously I will do the base as well, but I'll do that in a minute. So I'm going to just give this a quick dry and then I'll come back again. Okay, there we are. that's all now sort of dry, and you can see, if I can get some light on the subject, I think you can see that the colours are starting to build up on that fantastic texture. So I am now going to move to this orange, which is a cadmium orange. And I want some of that, but again, I just want a tiny amount. I don't want lots of this at all. This is just to put some highlights in there. So, you know, again, it's on and straight off again with the brush. And this is where you want to start getting really, you know, quite random, really. You don't want to overthink it. You don't want to try and sort of, you know, get any sort of pattern going. It is really random. It is just dab away at the areas where you've got the, you know, where you've already set up where your rust patterns are. You're just going to dab away and add this orange. So you're basically just sort of getting brighter as you go along. And again, you know, this is entirely up to you. You know, how much orange, because like I say, rust comes in a variety of colours, and if you don't want a really orangey looking rust, you just don't do that. You know, keep it quite brown and silver, and that in itself looks really, really funky, looks really cool and really realistic. So it is entirely up to you how far you want to take it. And it's a case of just keep going until you think, yeah, I'm done. I like that. There we go. So I'm liking that so far. Right. I'm going to give it another quick blast, and then we're going to go in with the final colour, and then we'll just give it all a final finish. Okay, that's now dry. So for the final colour, I'm going for a yellow. It's quite a warm sort of yellow, this one. This is Gamboge. Again, this is just a really cheap one, just a cheap yellow acrylic that I picked up from Home Bargains or BM Bargains or somewhere like that. So I'm going to put some of that in my palette. I'll bring that palette over so you can see it. But I am also... I'm just rubbing my brush off a little bit to try and get some of that orange off, because I'm not bothering to swap the brushes as I go along. You know, it doesn't matter if the colour mixes a little bit, but I don't want to muddy this one up as much. But what I have got that I'm going to pop into this acrylic paint is some sand. Again, I've been raiding the husband's scene building store for his Warhammer. So I'm just going to bung some of that sand into, so I wouldn't use your best paint brushes for this because it will trash them, but that's okay. There's no such thing as best paint brushes in my house. They're just paint brushes. There's tons of them. I buy them every now and again. I'll buy a pack of cheapy paint brushes, and I don't do fine art, so I don't need fine paint brushes. Okay. So that's just got a little bit more texture in it. And again, you don't have to do it. It's just an addition. It's just what I like to do. And again, I'm now going to take some of that off. And I'm going to go in there and very, very sparingly add bits of the yellow. Now I am going to knock all of this back because it's looking great, but it's also looking quite colourful. And that's, you know, that's okay, but it's not the final look that I want. So I will go back in and knock some of that back. So I'm just going to go along and touch in, oops, so again, just a bit much there. Using another paintbrush to just take some of that down, knock some of that back a little bit. That's it. So just a case of going through and popping some of this all over. Again, just until you're happy with it. like so, and then I'm going to dry it and we'll come back and finish it off. Okay, so I've now just got a little bit of silver again. You know, again, very, very little, because I'm not wanting to cover up what I've already done. I'm just wanting to pull out some of those highlights and, yeah, sort of knock some of it back just a little bit and sort of bring it all together as one piece. Like so. And there we go. Now obviously if you wanted anything more in there, so if you wanted a little bit more of the orange, now I quite like the burnt umber, that was my favourite of the sort of rusty colours, is the burnt umber. So again, I might just, you know, now that I've knocked some of it back, I might just go in and just dab a little bit back in here and there. And don't forget, it looks a little bit different when it dries. You know, it does tend to sort of knock back a bit naturally as it dries. And this is part of the process, is, you know, it's that back and forth, add in, knocking back, add in, knocking back, until you've got it. And the more you do that, the more layers and the more times you go in and you add a bit of, you know, a bit of colour, and then you add a bit of silver to knock it back again, and you know you might even knock it back with a bit of brown if it's gone way crazy, and that's fine. The more you do that, the more realistic your piece will end up looking in terms of that rust effect that you've got going on, like that. And then the last thing that you can do is add something to make the rust areas look shiny, look a little bit wet. So I used this clear gloss. It's just the Anita's. It's a bit like Glossy Accents, but it's cheaper. I really like it. And you can just, again, just go in and add a little bit of that over your rust areas. And what it'll do is it'll give it a slightly wet look when it dries. And again, that just helps with that sort of rusty, you know, damp old piece. It just helps give it that look. I really liked it on my other piece. So again, I'm not being precise. I'm not worrying about this. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just going on with the gloss gel, and I'm just dabbing it here and there along where the rust is, like that, and I'll leave that to dry. And obviously when this dries, it'll dry with a slight shine to it, because it is a gloss medium. So any gloss medium would work. You could do it with Glossy Accents, you could do it with a high gloss, like the proper medium stuff that you get. You could do pretty much anything. I would imagine that even Crackle Accents, because I don't think it would particularly crack because you're putting it on in such a thin layer. So yeah, I think you could pretty much use anything you wanted to. And if it looks a little bit soapy, don't worry, that will dry off clear when it dries. And that just helps to lift that rust, so that the rust is what your eyes are sort of drawn to, which I really like. Like I say, I was going for a very, very vintage, very old, very vintagey look on this one. I want it to look like you've literally just dragged it out of a barn and shoved some Christmas decorations inside it and made it look Christmassy. So that's how I do the rust element to it. So I think I'm going to leave this video here. And what I'll do is I'll do the frame. And then I'll come back probably at the weekend, and we will finish it off. We'll finish off the candle, and we will make some decorations to go inside our Christmas candle shadow box. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I do my rust process. I know that there's a ton of videos out there, you know, there's a ton of products out there that you can buy that, you know, are all the rust pastes and all that sort of thing. I just wanted to show that you don't need to have all of those products. You know, if you've got some basic acrylics in your stash, you know, even if you didn't have all of these colours, if you've got your basic colours of acrylics, you can make your oranges, your various different oranges, you know, a bit of yellow, and you've got, you know, mix them together and make a nice dark brown. You know, with a few simple acrylics, you can put anything in it to add texture. You could put some sawdust in it, you could put some flocking in it, you could put microbeads in it. Like I say, I've got sand, grit, you know. I've used, when I've wanted really chunky grit before, I've used like the fine stuff that you put in the bottom of fish tanks. And you look around you, there'll be grains, there'll be millet, there'll be all sorts of things that you've got in your house that you could use as texture. And you add that to your paints, to your mediums, to your homemade gessos and texture pastes. And you don't need to go out and buy all these fancy products that, you know, at the end of the day, they cost a lot of money and they do one job. You know, they make something look rusty. Whereas these tubes of acrylics will do tons of different jobs, and they are an awful lot cheaper. So I just wanted to share that process with you. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, if you like the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, then please do consider it, and click the bell icon, and then you'll get notified each time I upload a new crafty video. So I have got some other videos upcoming this week. I've got an unboxing from Bead Park. Got some cool things in there. I've got some other videos coming up with other projects that I've got planned. Whether I'll get them done this week, not really sure. See how I feel after work this week. But from Friday, I've got a week off. So we'll definitely be trying to get my craft on. I do still want to get to my Fimo faux ceramic. I still haven't got round to that yet. I've got a couple of resin projects in mind. So lots going on upstairs in the old brain department. Just struggling to find the energy and the time to do it. But holidays are coming. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again soon in another crafty video. Bye for now.